Hello and a very warm welcome to this training session brought to you in partnership with the Google News Initiative, Digital Publishing Success. That's our topic, our key topic today, as part of what we're hoping is a comprehensive look at our business strategy, especially today when it comes to reader revenue. That's the buzz phrase today, reader revenue. This is the second actually in a lesson on this. Maybe you were with us in the last hour. If you're back with us, welcome back. And if you're just joining us for this session, welcome as well. All of us moving down this road from traditional publishing to what we can offer online. And as we all know, fast changing, phenomenal changes seems to be happening every week when it comes to our digital transformation. So it's trying to get our heads around that. My name is Seamus. I'm an independent journalist and multimedia trainer. So I'm with you today also with Louise, who's in the chat with us, friendly Louise. So do reach out to Louise in the chat. Tell us who you are, where you're from, your interest perhaps in taking part in this lesson today. Are you working for a media organization? Do you own one? Are you part of one? Maybe you have a project. Maybe you're looking at starting a project. Maybe you have a traditional publication that you're wanting to have some kind of online presence. So do say hello, tell us who you are, where you're from. It's always great to know who the audience is. Actually, one of our key tips when it comes to making sure that when we're online, we know who the audience is about data, etc., reader insight. So it's always good for us to know as well, Louise and I, just to make sure that we know who we're talking to. Also today with us is Daryl, who's the broadcast manager, our technician. So if there are any issues, he will be there to help us as well. As we can see there on the screen, alternative income streams as part of this lesson on reader revenue. So before we were looking at optimizing the reader funnel. So this will resonate with a lot of people. So now it's really looking at some of the alternative income streams that we could possibly look at. And actually, let's just get a bird's eye view of where this fits in to the overall suite of lessons as part of this Google News Initiative project. As you can see there, this is part of reader revenue. So on the fifth column, the very bottom there, alternative income streams. We're looking at the opportunities, how we can develop the revenue flow, and also that crucial question of planning for the future. As I say, just before we looked at our user funnel, so those readers who are coming in at the top of the funnel, and we're wanting them to convert, aren't we, to become subscribers or contributors, to hand over cash, if we put it in brutal terms, but actually, creating that long-term revenue goal, the relationship between the publisher and the reader, which was crucial. Also, before that, we had assessing the opportunity, looking at the different reader revenue models, the paywalls, for example, the subscription models, newsletter sign-ins, etc. As you can see, there was a whole host of lessons as part of this project, and you can take a look at some of these with some of the links that Louise will share in the chat, going back, looking at advertising revenue, how we can actually optimize ad revenue, how we can use data when it comes to advertising, data management, how do we control the data, how do we make use of the data, interpret the data. Then there was audience development, for example, how we can engage with our readers, which is something we're also doing as part of revenue, reader revenue, and then the overall business strategy we looked at as well. So these 5 key areas, and a lot of this material is available online through some of the links that Louise will share with you in the chat. As I say, during the session as well, don't hesitate to reach out in the chat with any questions, any comments. If I talk about something that really resonates and you want to make a certain point, do reach out into the chat. That's always very useful. I'll keep an eye on that. And if there's anything relevant, any question that's relevant, I will try to bring that into the lesson as well. So right up front, we do like to point out up front as well, really to make sure that you're getting the most out of this training. So we do say that we're going to help show you a whole variety of options, useful tips that could be useful for you as you continue down this path, this digital transformation path. But it's important for us really to point out right up front that these are just options. And as I said at the beginning, the online world is complex, especially when it comes to digital publishing. Each and every business different. We have different challenges. No one is the same. You're best placed to know what path is best for you. So, take into account what we're sharing here, the case studies, the action plans, the tools, etc., through the links that we share. But at the end of the day, and I think you already know this probably, that, you're going to have to decide yourself what's the best option for you. And it's really going to be based on your own circumstances, what's happening at your place, your needs, the experience, the resources, for example, or the technical expertise, for example, especially when it comes to reader revenue, which can be a little bit tricky, as we saw in the previous lesson. But we are here to help and to try to simplify things as well. So why does this matter? We talked about this, the ever-changing world. It's complex. And we do need to plan, don't we? How can we actually make sure that we're ready for the future? We're here today. What does tomorrow hold? No one knows, but we can maybe try to make some assumptions. We can try to make some predictions about what we're likely to see. So imagine if we'd look back 10 years ago, there was no way that I could have imagined the world, the world we're living in today. There's absolutely no way. But, there were some people, they were capable of doing that. They were able to do that. The people who are successful today are those who 10 years ago imagined the world of tomorrow. And I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it? It's trying to put the thinking cap on and really try to put ourselves in the shoes of somebody possibly online in 10 years' time. And I think that's going to be one of the things that we want to look at today. So that whole thing about, preparing for the future. So let's just take a look at the 3 focus areas for this lesson. So the income opportunities. As you can see there, this eclectic mix of publishing case studies. And actually this lesson, we're really going to focus on case studies. We have a whole bunch of them at the start of this lesson. And the aim here is really to get your thought processes going, to get some inspiration, if you like, from some of the alternative options. And I think that's what's crucial here. We're not just looking at subscribers, advertising, etc., but looking at some of the eclectic options, if you like, the alternative options. And I think, some of the visionaries, we want to look towards them, perhaps. The people who were onto it 10 years ago, we want to try to maybe look at some inspiration, especially if we're searching around for ideas at the moment, if maybe we've been a little bit late to the party for some people. So really looking for that inspiration. Second, revenue flow, exploring how we can generate the maximum return from the products that we have. And this was a question from somebody in the previous session from Flo, was saying, what can we do to promote? What are some of the metrics when it comes to promoting the content? And that's interesting as well, and we'll try to look at that as well, and trying to align all of this, making sure that we have tech stacks that actually answer some of these questions through links as well to some of the experts who really have looked at this. And then this crucial question of planning for the future, looking ahead, how the landscape may change and how we can adapt to that. So now, what's next, and in the long term. So let's jump straight into it. So income opportunities. And here we're moving away from the concept of advertising, subscriptions, contributions, the reader revenue options we looked at in the last lesson, if you were there for that. It's really, how can publishers become innovative? How can we experiment, and how can we look around and search around for different options? Some people have already started to do that. And this may be something you can do. We'll show you some case studies here, but take an interest in this, look online, see, check out some of the innovation websites when it comes to news organizations and publishers, and see what some people are doing all around the world. And it's true that sometimes we tend to focus on what's happening in our own country or in Europe, if we're in Europe. But it's good to look, towards Australia, South Africa, the US, Asia, and even to emerging markets. A lot of these great ideas are coming out of emerging markets. So I would encourage you to do that as well. So before we jump into all of the options that we can explore together, let's just first look at the needs of our reader, because that's crucial, isn't it? Understanding the reader. That's why I asked you to introduce yourselves to me and to Louise before we start this session, just so we can get an idea of who we're talking to. Who is the listener, or in this case, who's the reader? And success, I think we can probably say, is going to be defined by the reader. So it's really bringing value to that person. Do we have their trust? Do they feel a sense of connection, a sense of community to us? Are they close to our brand, to our purpose, to our mission? What are we doing? So if we put aside traditional advertising revenue and the more popular consumer revenue models, and here we can talk about membership, subscriptions, donations even, people who are donating to newspapers, let's take a look at what else actually can we do? What else is there in the array of options? And actually, the revenue options that we just talked about, it's not the entire opportunity. It's not the only way to go, and it's this concept of thinking differently outside of the box, just to use a cliche, tapping into the needs and the wants of our readers. And often we're going to find the solution by looking at the needs of our readers. So what are they looking for? And they're going to be the key to our success here, I think. So just one example, and you can see there on the screen, we talk about e-commerce opportunities. So, you have a reader, but what else do they want? Maybe physical products, maybe actually, and we'll see an example of this where we had a news organization, a news website, and actually they started to sell products. They went into e-commerce and they actually now get more visitors on that than they do to the news site, but it's still linked and there's crossover. So it can be very useful. So you can have your own products, your own branding, for example. You could have products that are made in association with partners, for example. These could be digital products. Don't forget, we're not just talking about products that have nothing to do with your mission. So you could have digital products. So you could maybe sell something linked to what you're doing. Ebooks, online guides, expertise, for example, white papers on some of the things you're talking about. So if you do an interview with an expert, you could maybe have a selection of experts that could become an ebook. So you are seen as a reference. So you're seen as a go-to when we're looking for the expertise that maybe you provide as part of your website. We could be talking about affiliates as well. So we could be talking about events, selling the data, organizing events, sharing with the readers as well. So these win-win partnerships with other businesses as well. Maybe somebody who's having success, so tapping into somebody else's success as well. But of course, making sure that it's linked to what you're doing, so that there's not confusion about who you are and why. If we come to you, why would we want to do this, etc. So just to spend a little bit of time on that, just to use that information perhaps as an introduction to some of these case studies now. And as I say, we have a whole host of case studies now, very interesting. And as we'll see, a lot of these are in the US. A lot of these new models or the alternatives we're seeing, it's true that a lot of these we're seeing in the US. There's been a real drive and a real push towards this in the US. We know that from lots of media organizations. Just take a look at this example, the Texas Tribune. They actually hold an annual event. This is 3 days. They have over 300 speakers, and this is generating income, so direct income from this. So, and that's the direct income, but don't forget, we're also, they're creating a buzz. So actually we have other organizations, other news organizations writing articles about the events held by the Texas Tribune. So that's remarkable. So your competitors actually talking about what you're doing. So the free promotion, the publicity. And then we can have the highlights, and you can have replays and the podcasts, and we can continue the conversation elsewhere, maybe in your media as well. So this is a great idea. Lots of companies are actually looking at this. I know in Europe as well, we have these seminar days organized by media. We can have these rendezvous sessions where you can come along and talk to your favorite journalist or have a dialogue with your favorite journalist, as long as they agree to that. It can be a room full of people asking questions of a scientific reporter. So how do you do your job? And if there's a travel reporter, for example, they can go along to a travel event, and your media organization can be present at the travel event. That's going to generate interest, and it can actually generate revenue as well, because maybe you'd be paid for your expertise at the travel event. So this can be very useful as well. Training, for example, your journalists or your expertise, you could be using that. You could be training other people. sharing the expertise. So that's just one of the examples. And as we can see there, this 3-day event for the Texas Tribune, mouth-watering when you look at the figures. This is 80% up in terms of the revenue. So phenomenal, some great successes. Let's look at GeekWire Awards. This is a Seattle-based tech publication. So the same thing, hosting a whole host of different events. They have an annual ceremony that honors top companies, and that's a great one, actually, introducing an award concept. So if you're a major publication, you can actually hand out awards to people in certain areas. Great for a tech publication as well. It fits in very nicely with this. So this is across the Pacific Northwest. So in 2018, just one example, as you can see there, 900 people. This is at the Museum of Pop Culture. And this now the 10th annual GeekWire Awards. And it also creates a buzz because lots of people are now doing stories on those awards. So as we say, this cross-promotion. Staying in Seattle, the Seattle Times, working with third parties to create and to sell relevant content to its audiences. And I think some of the things we can see there, as you can see on the screen there, wall art, keepsake pages. This is something also the New York Times is doing. So selling reprints from the archives. So for example, I know when Barack Obama won the presidency in the US, that front page, so many people wanted to buy that front page because it made history in so many ways. So that was sold. That made, that generates cash for the New York Times. I think I even have a copy of that somewhere on one of my walls. So photos and prints. So if you have a great photojournalist taking fantastic photos, why not create ebooks? Why not create those coffee table books from some of those fantastic photos being taken by your photographers? Another example here in the US, as I say, really a hotbed of innovation. So the Denver Post, again, selling archive photographs. This is another example of photojournalists putting together their work. And we can see, when we looked at the print and the newspapers, people saying, gosh, I love that photograph. Wouldn't it be great if I had that on the wall? That's perfect for my company, or that's perfect for my organization. The photo of the elephants in Africa, for example, that'd be great for my organization on the environment. And people in the past, that wasn't possible. They could buy something possibly from some organizations, but now, you can actually make that part of your stable. So people can come to you and they can, try to buy some of that work. And this digital age as well, it's very easy to sell that. You can send that by email, people download it. So that's great as well, some of those digital products. This is another company, another example. This is the Richland Source in Ohio. And they actually launched what's known as Made in the 419 or 419. So this is a portal, and they're actually selling clothing, locally produced goods. And as I said, this is the example where I said they're actually now generating more traffic than the original news site. So that's interesting. So you want to kind of maybe make sure that we still have the link, that we're not completely making a separate business and we're forgetting the news, or maybe that's the way to go. But you'd want to somehow try to maintain a link with the readership. So maybe the word here is local. So this is supporting local businesses. Lots of local radio stations and magazines and papers, for example, they get in behind these campaigns. Support local businesses, buy local. This also spins in with local advertising as well, and we see lots of examples of that. BuzzFeed, that's a really good example when it comes to affiliate links. Okay, no need to run your own e-commerce. You can actually just earn a small percentage of product sales from click-through affiliate links. BuzzFeed, digital trends, classic examples now when it comes to this. Weaving, the purchase opportunities into the content. And that's the trick here. This is the challenge. This is where we have innovation, is actually making the link. So we talked there about the clothing in Ohio there, the clothing and the news website. Here it's actually the challenge of bringing it right into the editorial. So we often use that word now, don't we? Advertorial. in this new millennium. So this is one way to go. It can also be, if it's not actually selling, it can also be product reviews, for example. That can be interesting as well. Product reviews, and when people go off to then buy the product, there's a percentage maybe for the media organization. Another case study, Brain Pickings. This is another affiliate program. So another publisher tapping into the Amazon affiliate program. So this is the same concept. So weaving those links into the text in such a way that it's going to encourage the reader to dive deeper into a topic. So if we're doing a story on something, on mobile phone technology, maybe there's a link, or we're weaving in there somewhere some kind of affiliate option. And of course, that has to fit in with our overall strategy, doesn't it? Some organizations will say, well, I don't want to have that commercial element. That's not for me to be selling products as part of my editorial. So that's going to be something that you're going to have to sit down with your company, with all of the different people involved, to make sure that it's part of your mission statement, if there is that kind of commercial aspect. And I think the key here for me, when we're talking about this, and a lot of media organizations doing this, is the transparency of it. Being very transparent about the fact that we are linked to the Amazon affiliate program, or that if you're clicking on that, we're getting a percentage of that. So it's actually having that transparency. I think that's one of the questions, one of the key questions as part of that debate, if that's a road that you want to go down. Another case study here, Boing Boing. The entire web store geared up to the type of products that the audience is going to want. So really choosing the products, not just willy-nilly having clothing and pot plants and pots and pans or home appliances, but actually choosing the products suited for the audience. And so this is a mixture of drop shipping. These affiliate arrangements, you may have heard about the publisher really trying to diversify the income. So in a similar but different vein, if you like, to the Richland Source we saw there in Ohio. So this online store, a whole range of products, gadgets, as you can see there, lifestyle related goods, and trying to find this link with our brand or our mission statement, if you like. Here's another interesting way. I talked earlier about training. So we have a lot of media organizations now setting up training programs. I think we see there Reuters. Reuters has a training foundation, for example. So the expertise of Reuters journalists and executives, we're sharing that expertise with the public, generating money. This is another thing, actually. This is what we call content studios, a little bit like the training centers set up by Reuters or the New York Times, etc. But this is actually Reuters and companies like this, also CBS. There's another one there you see there, Refinery 29, actually having their own content studios, creating adverts for themselves. So the adverts they're making are suited for their audience and are suited for their platforms. So we're not just taking, adverts that don't really match up with what we're offering online. And so this is good. And so the spin-off from this, so this was a great idea. And then the spin-off from that was actually taken even further, is that those studios are now actually making adverts for other companies, possibly similar companies, who say, great, I love that advert. Who made that? Oh, CBS. Well, I'm going to buy that as well, even if you're a competitor. So really making money at both ends of the advertising spectrum. So we're making the advert and we're getting money from the advert. So, maybe that was somebody that was a visionary 10 years ago who kind of wondered how could things develop, and that's what we looked at. So let's look at something else here now. This is when it comes to research and analysis. This is a company called Skift. So this is where we're earning money from research and analysis, as we talked about. Successfully selling white papers. This is great. Reporting on things happening, so current events, getting expertise, and then getting, bringing all of that together into a white paper. Not necessarily a white paper, that sounds very academic, but it could be an ebook of expertise on a certain topic, on the energy sector in Africa, for example. So if you've done a whole series of interviews with experts, you make this white paper or this report or this ebook on that topic. So as you can see there, the reports offered by Skift, this is going to cost from about $50, and can go up to, for an ebook, it could be $695, almost $700, and people are actually willing to fork out and pay for that. imagine for these detailed reports. So that could be an option for you if you're into the nitty-gritty of things, if you're really focused on that whole thing about expertise. Are you feeling inspired? Do you see yourself in some of those examples? And obviously, we're talking there about some big companies, but also we've talked about some smaller companies and some of those smaller rural areas in the US. So sometimes something starts small, it becomes massive, but also it can be vice versa. It can be something that's massive that you can actually take the concept and create something small based on that overall concept. So hopefully you're feeling inspired. Here's an activity Louise will put into the chat, hopefully, or you can maybe take a screenshot of this. So this is taking inspiration from what we've just talked about. Here's a list of those links to the publishers, these organizations that we've looked at, providing us with inspiration. Don't forget also, this is just a short list, but you can look online, look for your own inspiration, maybe something that's more suited for what you're doing. Look at what you like. Look at what you don't like. It's not for everybody. Mixing in the commercial, and the editorial to create advertorial, for example. But it may suit you. It may suit your audience. So take a look at that. Hopefully, Louise will be able to put into the chat something on that as well. So let's move on to our next topic, which is making your revenue flow. And I think that's the crucial word, isn't it? Flow with a capital F, we could probably put there. So tapping into new revenue sources, what you're going to want to do is to keep that flowing. Make sure that, we'll use the US term because we were in the US a little bit there. The maximum bang for your buck. I'm not sure if there's an equivalent way we can say that in Europe. But really, it's thinking about the ways that, where we've identified a revenue source, but it's actually making sure that we keep the revenue source and that it keeps flowing. A bit like, we discover the oil in the back garden, we open it up and we want to make sure that the oil keeps coming out, that it wasn't just, for half a day and that's it. So it's the journey and making sure that it's frictionless, making sure that everybody's on board, that, that we've identified the source and there's really no obstacle from keeping that open. So the 3 areas of focus for this to try to keep those revenues flowing in. Let's look at those. So optimizing the conversion funnel. So this is where we have the customers, the readers coming into the top of the funnel, and we want to make sure they stay in the funnel and they're coming down, and we're refining, and we're making sure that we have the high conversion rates. Removing ad blockers. That's something very interesting. It's that whole thing about, having voluntary agreements. So people are on our side. So where, people are sharing our mission statements and they're saying, hey, well, actually, I don't want to have an ad blocker with that website because actually I want to be there. I like those adverts. And sometimes they're very relevant. And I want to help that company exist. I want to keep them afloat. So, why would I block the ads? Because I actually want them to be with me, to be part of my life. Making your assets work together, that's also crucial as well. We'll look at that. So let's just drill down into this concept of optimizing the conversion funnel. So this may well need to be handled quite differently actually on mobile compared with desktop. So optimizing this, just because your desktop landing page is viewed or can be viewed on a mobile device, it doesn't actually mean that that's good. It might be that you need to look at some of the metrics, look at some of the tips in the playbook, and actually Louise will put this into the chat. This is the playbook on a lot of these tips and options. This is newsinitiative.withgoogle.com assets, and Louise can share the link there with you. But just because if automatically your developer or your website company is just automatically making a mobile version, doesn't mean that you can't tweak with that. Doesn't mean that you can't create special pages just for the mobile. And I think that's one of the reasons here. And it's also this whole concept of time is of the utmost importance. So you have up until about 8 seconds. People are actually deciding. I think 90% of readers are actually deciding whether to read an article completely just by a headline, and the opening teaser, the little introduction at the top. Not more than 90%, I think it is, more than 90%, 92% are actually making that decision. And they're doing that, in a matter of seconds. So absolutely crucial. So some of the best practices we can look at, as you can see there, pinning the content above the fold. So above the point where we can, when people are scrolling, above the point we can see. So your publication logo, the emotional tagline, some of these taglines and phrases, and some of the promotion, making sure that this is always visual. Making sure that the look and the feel is good, maximizing the conversion. So making sure that you're highlighting what you want to highlight, the prices, the savings, the promotions, some of the things that we use when it comes to the call to action. So some of these buttons, making sure that they're attractive, and it may just come down to the sheer format of the call to action. Round buttons or square buttons. With hard edges, or what kind of colors, warm colors or cold colors. Some of these things we're going to want to look at, and keeping things simple, concise, clean, to make sure that we don't have things that are flowing over edges and we're clicking on things by mistake because it's too close to something else we're clicking on. So just some of those things, the kinds of buttons we're using, how big are they, etc. And then the speed, of course, making sure that everything is loading fast. Every second counts. We can't repeat that enough, can we? That it's absolutely important when it comes to the speed. And then just making sure you're optimizing the landing pages when it comes to the desktop and the tablet as well. So that's very crucial. Also, when it comes to the conversion funnel, the checkout flow, this is crucial. I have a couple of websites myself, and this has been big. So, trying to introduce automation into this. So if somebody's abandoning a cart, for example, if somebody's, wanted to buy something, they hesitated, it stayed in the basket or at the checkout for too long, I'll actually have an automatic email that's sent to the person to say, did you know that your process didn't go through, that you still have something in the basket? Was that deliberate or not? And can I help you further? And so this whole thing of also less is better, just to make sure that it's a very easy process. So we're not wanting people to fill in too much information that's not necessary, making sure that it's very fast. This is part of the user experience, very important, thinking about what your reader is actually doing when they're going to some kind of checkout. Another statistic there, almost 70% of all e-commerce visitors abandon the shopping cart. They leave something in the basket. And actually, it'd be interesting to look at the figures of why have they left something in the basket? Why didn't they go through with the process? That's what I'm trying to find out at the moment with my websites. What are people doing? Is it because they're confused? Is it because they changed their minds? Is it because I don't have enough information, that they weren't able to make a decision because there wasn't enough information? So we say less is better, but sometimes we need to, make things clearer. So sometimes we do need to add more information if we identify that that's actually causing problems. Less keyboard, happier readers. So automatic fill-ins. So the automatic fields, being filled in, the forms being filled in automatically with the help of the browser. And then, of course, the look and the feel, the same as what we talked about when it comes to the overall look of the website. So, making sure that we have something that's staying in the right place. So a sticky header, for example, the checkout flow on one page, we're not having to go through several pages, etc. So those are just some of the things to look at when it comes to conversion, because this is the whole thing about making sure the reader is staying with us in the funnel. They're coming all the way down to make that crucial engagement, which is subscription, which is contribution, which is signing up for a newsletter, looking at some kind of alternative option as well when it comes to providing us with revenue. So just a couple of points extra on this. We just spend a little bit of time on this. So the checkout page, making sure that it's loading as fast as possible. Every second counts. And actually, some of the research is pointing out that every additional second of load time, that ends up meaning 7% fewer sales. Should we be asking for the physical address when it's a digital-only subscription? That's a good question to ask. Do A/B testing removing site navigation bar when it comes to the checkout. On the mobile, this means removing the hamburger menu, perhaps, other icons, and something else, unlinking the brand logo. The summary of the order, that's just another example. This should be easy to see, stuck in the right place. It should be sticky. Desktop and tablets, so people are not getting confused. Also, maybe the option of cancelling an order. Is that easy? Are people abandoning because they can't, because they've changed their minds or they made a mistake? They clicked on the wrong thing. So those are just some of the things to consider as well. Let's take a look at another case study. And just before we look at this, just a reminder to put into the chat, make contact with Louise if you have any questions or remarks. Tell us whether this is resonating with you. Are these points that you're taking on board? What's your experience? Even if it's not a question, even if it's just like a little remark, it could be something interesting for others as well. So don't hesitate. Louise is there for you in the chat as well, sharing some of these links as well, some of these case studies, playbooks that we've been looking at as well. Business Insider. This is the popular business brand, testing, optimizing some of the different subscription prompts, and actually based on Google's News Consumer Insights, known as NCI. And so there'll be a link for this as well in the chat, hopefully from Louise. You can discover more about News Consumer Insights, but it's that crucial thing about making sure that we're understanding the data, so we're getting the insights on what people are doing. And we're going to make sure that we remove the friction. That's what it's all about when it comes to prompts and when it comes to landing pages. So what the Business Insider did was they tested, they optimized the different prompts based on actually what they found in the News Consumer Insights tool. And there were best practices, and when it came to call to action, when it came to the shape and the position of the buttons and the colors, what I talked about just a moment ago. So this methodology, they actually applied that to the main subscription landing page. Loading times, and when it came to the search, discovering the search, also that was addressed to try to improve the performance. And as you can see there, stunning, up 150% when it comes to subscription revenue just in one quarter. And then up 40% when it came to the long-term subscribers over 2 months. So great figures there. Another case study. Dagens Nyheter in Sweden. They had almost 0 digital-only subscribers. The sign-up process, they discovered, far too complex. So they actually worked out that they needed to have a partnership on this. So they worked with the payments provider Klarna. I'm not sure if that's written on the screen there. No, but it's Klarna with a K, creating a simpler sign-up solution. One-click subscriptions, one-stop shop. And so as you can see there, the net growth in terms of subscriptions up 12%. So something was working right there. This is another interesting topic. I briefly mentioned this. So removing ad blockers. And this is a second area of focus when trying to keep those revenues flowing, because we don't want people to be putting on the ad blockers. But how can we do this, especially when it comes to regulation in Europe, etc., when it comes to privacy, giving people choices? This could be, and actually, if there is a block when it comes to your revenue flows, it could be that readers have blocked your ads. And sometimes that's not deliberate. Sometimes people do it because the option is made and they don't really make the informed choice. So you're going to make sure you want to inform the reader. And it's a challenge. It's a bit of a conundrum, but maybe if we can seek transparency on this, if we actually approach the reader and say, "Hey, well, actually, no, would you mind actually not putting on the ad blocker?" As you can see there on the screen, when we looked at this, 30% had their ad blockers installed by someone else, and that's why I say sometimes it's not deliberate. 54% there, they didn't know that there actually was this concept of a whitelist. Okay, so we know what a blacklist means. Of course, airlines that are blacklisted, etc. Bans put on people and companies. But we can have a whitelist. These people are allowed, and we see that in our parameters and our settings in our computers. We actually allow different websites to have access to our camera, to our microphones, etc. It's exactly the same concept. And then 50% of people allowing ads to show on at least one site, so a site of choice perhaps. So maybe you need to become a site of choice. You need to talk to your customers, to your readers, and to say, you know, what can we do to actually do this? Identify with them why are you not on my whitelist? Why are you not letting me show you adverts? So introducing funding choices as well linked to this. So this is a tool that's going to identify visitors who are using an ad blocker and actually asking them to whitelist your site. So, you know, we can say, yeah, approach your readers and identify the reasons, etc. Well, this is actually a tool, because actually, you know, easier said than done, Seamus, you maybe have said just a moment ago, but actually this is a tool that makes it maybe easier for you. This is going to help you identify those people who are using the blocker. And, you know, it's actually giving choices. So this is Google's funding choices. And Louise, hopefully in the chat, will be able to give you a link for this. This is a tool that you could go and have a look at, have a play with it, see if it works. But it's an easy to use messaging tool, and it's going to help you in terms of the communication with the user. So this is the key to it. So trying to get the consent or the opt-out, because some people are going to say no, of course. But some of these requests, some of what we're doing here is actually required by the regulations, like the European General Data Protection Regulation. We know that now as GDPR. But also, you know, look in the US, the California, for example, Consumer Privacy Act. And so it's really making sure that we're going to those people to say, you know, can we actually recover from you that lost revenue when you switched us off when it came to adverts? So example of the revenue flow. Let's just have a look at this here. This is the third area of focus, making sure that your assets are working together. So compounding or stacking the opportunities. We love that word, don't we? Stacking, the tech stacks and the stacking of things, aligning things. And this is going to give added power. So making sure that your assets are working together, that's the key here. So when we talk about stacking, that's what it is. If we don't stack, if everything is compartmentalized, if we create silos, in the world of business we talk about silos, then that's possibly, you know, more than often that's not going to work. So thinking about how the content and the earning opportunities actually fit together in the organization, how they complement each other. So as you can see there on the screen, somebody watching one of your videos, that, you know, when we look at the revenue, we're looking at ads and sponsorship. Okay, so as you can see there, these three opportunities: affiliate, ads, e-commerce working together. Somebody watching one of your videos, you take them to a link for more information. That's the key to it. So on the site, you'll sell them something related to their interest, their viewing behavior, linked to something bigger, perhaps even linked to the content, something they saw on the video, part of the call to action as well. So thinking about the customer journey. So when they read that article, and often as a journalist, if we write something, we're wanting there to be a discussion afterwards. We don't want just someone to read the article and that's it. So thinking about the reader in terms of a customer journey, at what point can we then come in and try to see if we can, you know, get them to engage with us more, to sign up, to contribute, to subscribe as well. And so that raises a question for you, I can imagine. Are you maximizing your earning potential? And let's just answer that by looking at some areas of focus. So optimizing the conversion funnel, removing the ad blockers, making your assets work together. Those are the 3 points that you'll be wanting to look at. So that's just a recap of what you're wanting to do. So optimizing the conversion funnel, the main point there would be the A/B. Test everything, experiment, look for inspiration. Removing the ad blockers. So it's really asking people to think about a whitelist. You know, do you know about that? Maybe we can strike some kind of agreement on other funding choices. If you don't want to see the ads, what do you want to see? And then this thing about making the assets work together. So it's the call to actions actually that identify, you know, the next step in the process. And hopefully, you know, with with the potential of generating revenue, of course, because we are in it for a business. Unless, of course, you're not a business. And then, of course, some of these commercial things and the whole revenue option is not so important. But I think for most of us, very important. Just a word here about Google Optimise. So more help on this. Maybe you could try something like Google Optimise. This is a tool that's going to show you what site experiences engage your customers. So this is talking about optimizing your landing pages and your sites and your mobile devices. So what are the experience where you're getting more engagement? Or what are we enjoying? Maybe just, in terms of, this is delightful. People are actually enjoying this. So Google Optimize is good for this. It's custom tailored. The message is at a checkout, at a completely revamped homepage. Optimize is going to show you those experiences. And it's going to talk about some of the solutions you need to deliver those. So it's really trying to help you, go down this path. So it's a free product, allows you to get started with this. And then you also have Optimize 360, and that's a premium testing, really more personalized tool for the company. And that's part of Google Marketing Platform. But just one idea there in terms of a tool. Future planning, and we're coming to the end of the session, and there's been so much to fit in here, but I'm going to cover this because it's very important. So we did talk about this at the beginning, but we've come full circle. Future planning in a world where your book runs out of battery. Who could guess what happened next? And I think this is the key, that who would have thought that we were going to need a battery for a book? So just one example of looking into the future, planning for the future. Podcasts. Have you thought about a podcast? Who would have thought 10 years ago that podcasts were going to be on the rise in 2022? And it's often an area now where publishers who have been struggling have really seen an ability to monetize, to create revenue. So just one example there, podcast revenue. Look at that growth in the figures there, 2022, absolutely astonishing if you look back to 2013. Podcast revenue development. So we can also talk about the developments like dynamic ad insertion, adverts available for a certain number of plays, programmatic audio advertising. Okay, so that's built into the programs. Detailed audio analytics. So some of those developments in the early stages, but maybe they could provide some valuable data. So bridging the gap between what's happening in terms of just the example of the podcast and what's happening in terms of the revenues, because it's true, a lot of people are looking at podcasts, but how do we actually turn that into money? It could be a question of the generation, and we talk about the future, the past, etc. And this is perhaps a generation game, highlighting the different generations within your audience, pushing the boundaries when it comes to your assumptions. We talk about the Z generation, the X generation, the baby boomers, and also the millennials. So it's really looking and putting yourself in the shoes of those people. So not planning for yourself, but actually looking at the different generations, not just thinking about, it's actually a thing about creating personas as well. That's great in marketing. Maybe it could be useful for you as well, that whole thing about personas. And then attracting younger readers, that's a big push for lots of companies, because that's the future, isn't it? It's the younger generation. The generation Z, even the alphas, these are children now, but they'll be students before we know it. And then young adults looking around for their sources of information. They're looking around for where they're going to go for their information. What's the publisher? What's the best publisher for me? Even at the age of 13, 14, 15. And so before the end of the 2020s, that's going to be a big question. So you want to think about that as well. And for lots of companies, that's become very important. And just to finish on, just a couple of little examples here when we talk about the next generation. So just looking forward, ending on this note about looking into the future. The Financial Times there on that question of the younger generation, half price subscriptions to every college student in the UK, and free subscriptions to students at secondary schools around the world. So that's interesting. Dagens Nyheter, we talk about them in Sweden also. So every reader under 25, they get a free subscription during the general election, and not even having to use a credit card, because how many youngsters have a credit card? They've made that absolutely easy. So this whole concept of expansive thinking. It's good to finish with this because this, hopefully will inspire you. So this whole concept of expansive thinking, we need to think expansively. So think about that, jot that down, have a look online about this whole concept of expansive thinking, thinking outside the box, looking at multiple ways of achieving our goal. And the revenue, what's your revenue strategy going to look like in 5 years' time? Have you thought about that? Now, at the moment, adapting to what you can do at the moment, but what could you do later if you built up your resources in the long term? So it's actually looking at this whole concept of planning, now, next, long. A lot of these things you can find in some of the links that Louise will have shared as well, if you want to do that. So just a summary of what we looked at, the income opportunities. These are the 3 topics, and these are the 3 things that you want to seek out in more detail later. Don't wait too long, while it's fresh in the mind. Look at some of those links that Louise shared, revenue flows, planning for the future. Look for some of the tools that you could use. If you are wanting to make plans for the future, is there some kind of template that you could use in an internal meeting to get some of that reflection going, to get people to put on their thinking caps? And on some of those links that Louise shared, there are tools for that, for asking these questions, doing it in a very academic and a very scientific way. Don't know if there are any questions during the session. I'm just having a look at my link here with Louise. I don't think there were any questions here. So we are coming to the end of the session. So it's, don't forget that that we do have other sessions as part of the GNI program. Audience development there could be very interesting related to this. Growing your readership could be very interesting. So don't hesitate to take a look at some of the other content linked to this: business strategy, data management, advertising revenue. A lot of this is very important. And if you want to continue the conversation, continue the journey, don't forget that we have roundtables as part of these lessons. And actually the one linked to this, to reader revenue, it's with myself and with Louise, a roundtable happening tomorrow. So direct contact with us, with both of us, 10 o'clock UK time tomorrow. So that could be very useful for you as well. So don't forget about that as well. Also, the lab sessions, these are expert sessions. It's a training available via the Google News Initiative program. So Louise will have a link for that as well. And also feedback for us is very important in terms of continuing the journey, making sure that you tell us what you want to hear about, what you like, what resonates, etc. So thank you very much. And Louise will have put a link for the feedback as well. It's great to know our audience. Thank you so much for your attention. Hopefully we've got some people putting on their thinking caps. Hopefully we've triggered some interest, and you're going to have a look around now to dig deeper into some of these topics we talked about. But good luck in whatever project you're involved in, and hopefully see you again for another training session as part of the Google News Initiative. Thanks very much from the team, and have a great day wherever you are. Bye for now.